I am here in Metro Denver. I'm in Denver right now. I am an actionist, not an activist, as you heard me introduced. I do not activate anything. I take action in the ways that we need to change things within our nation and on this planet. My background, to give everyone a little bit of background on myself, I am one of the co-founders of the Caravan for Racial Justice. Myself, Shanika Carter, and Stephanie Rose Spalding. We began this journey in July when there were 87 protesters arrested illegally and detained illegally inside of Louisville, Kentucky, without bail, without any form of resolve or justice, just simply to stifle their voices. Within 4 days, we had raised more than $20,000. We had a caravan of about 40 actionists that would go and emerge ourselves in what would be ground zero in Louisville to help support the family of Breonna Taylor and the actionists there on the ground in Louisville. When we arrived, it was very interesting. We saw a lot of things that we did not anticipate and a lot of things that we were already experiencing here in Denver. I think that Louisville didn't quite know what to do with us. They weren't sure what we would have to say or what approach we would take. But most of us were very seasoned. We had been involved for quite some time in actions against police brutality, police murder, community endangerment, systemic oppression. I mean, you name it. We had already been more than neck deep, probably eyeball deep. There was a murder here in the Metro Denver area last year. A young man named McClain was murdered. He would hit international news after the murder of George Floyd. Unfortunately, I had been working diligently on everything Elijah McClain since days after his murder. His family and I would become very close and intertwined, as well as Breonna Taylor's family later. So we were ready and prepared when we got to Louisville, boots on the ground, to support our comrades in whatever was occurring. We knew that this systemic assassination and genocide of anyone actionist level was coming our way. We were well aware of. Unfortunately, Louisville, Breonna Taylor's ground zero, and Aurora, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver, would become two main focal points for some reason. It was as if we were working in tandem to figure out who was ahead of everything as far as what would happen for performative action across the nation. So what was happening was, as we were making action, the government was building their oppressive system higher and higher to give us, once again, the Band-Aid on the bullet wound. And so we would be given things like police task force, and they named them a million different names. But they would literally be performative action. They would never really encompass justice or anything that looked near that for a Black woman, a Black man, or a Black child. So as we got to Louisville, we got to see a lot of different ways that there were just performative actions happening. I came to a realization about Elijah McClain's case, a lot of things that would and would never come to pass. But ultimately that Black men and Black women were continued to be hunted at a rate unprecedented for several reasons, whether it be murder, incarceration. Either way, it was slavery evolved. And so part of what our mission would become with the Caravan for Racial Justice was waking the nation up that claimed they were asleep to all of the atrocities that we had been enduring, and I will say enduring, for hundreds of years on this land, stolen land nonetheless. We would be reinvented, circumvented, circumcised, annihilated, and we would be treated as if we were a non-factor, when truthfully we were the largest grossing commodity on this soil from the beginning of its inception. So what that means is there would never be growth without my body or someone's body that shared common characteristics that I would as a Black man or woman. When we became engaged systemically with the things that were occurring, what we were seeing was actionists from across the nation were bringing things to the table that we already knew of. They were talking about the mental health disparities, all these different things that we were fully aware of in our nation, but for some reason the sheets have been ripped off. I often say that we were butt naked in the woods when 2020 began to really take off. Corona, our lovely friend, COVID-19 would show up and ensure that everything that was an impossibility according to system would now become possible with just the snap of a finger, and a couple of things would happen that would be very interesting. So coronavirus led us to a place where systemic oppression would become butt naked in the woods, much like we would across this planet. We would see the ugliest parts of our nation becoming exposed to the rest of the planet in a way unprecedented. And so as we began to look at the way that the flower unfolded, police brutality went through the roof. It was at over 1,000%. By April 22nd, we had an increase in police brutality and murder across our nation that we hadn't seen since the civil rights era. Here in Colorado, we began forming actions as things began to heighten with George Floyd. I had been doing actions since the day Elijah McClain had been murdered by the Aurora Police Department and injected with ketamine. Took a 40-minute ambulance ride from where he would be brutally assaulted, and it was literally a 30-second ride via ambulance on a normal day. He would be MIA in that ambulance for more than 40 minutes with his body brutalized, tortured. By the time he arrived at the hospital, he would be brain dead and on life support. His family would not see him for days and wouldn't hear anything until the next day. During the first few months of Elijah's case, I would be there with probably 7 other people screaming, hollering, jumping up and down, and just attempting to gain local attention, let alone national or international attention. Our locals weren't even paying attention to it. And as we began to dig in and we got butt naked in the woods, we saw some very interesting things happening because not only were people waking up because of COVID, they had the time and opportunity to sit still and hear some of the things that were really happening, and to stop playing the game that they were unaware. And so what we saw was a greater uprise here in the Denver metro area and across our nation, because people are tired. And once you sit down and you get to sit with it, it becomes a thorn in your side. Either you're going to get up and you're going to take the thorn out and do something about it, or you will continue to be complacent within that. What we're seeing now across our nation is that complacency will no longer happen. We will no longer accept the evolution of slavery over our bodies. We are breaking chains. So although we got butt naked in the woods, as I like to say, it was really about the sheets that were coming off. And the sheets that were coming off were the Klan sheets. So we got to see a president in the United States that would openly support the Proud Boys and ask them to stand up and stand by, or stand back and stand by, whatever he said. But at the same time, you would also see a nation of Black men and Black women get up in a way that we never have before. We are tired of pruning trees as we did in the 60s. And now we are here to cut down the tree from the root. At this point, that is the issue that we will have in this nation. We have to have an alchemist that comes in and looks at the soil, because now our soil has been contaminated. They are what's called a landsman. A landsman will come in and look at the soil and tell you via alchemy what will grow in this sand, what will grow in this dirt, what will grow in what you have already poisoned. Or will we have to wait and add something to the soil so that the soil can be nourished again? What exactly is it we would have to do within our nation to finally have healthy soil so that our root was no longer riddled with white supremacy? And so as we begin to take the Band-Aids off of our bullet wounds here in this nation as Black women and Black men, we realize that this is not an ask. It is a demand, and we will no longer sit by futilely and prune the tree. That happened in the civil rights era. And yes, I am my ancestors. They have died for what I will continue moving forward. Here in Colorado with Elijah McClain's case, we haven't seen much movement, and I doubt that we will. We will be subject to the same exact issues that we have been for hundreds and hundreds of years. Injustice on the back of a Black man or a Black woman or a Black child. And so even though the Attorney General, Phil Weiser, has been called in, even though we have a police oversight committee, we have seen even more atrocity come out of the city of Aurora. They would have 6 young Black women on the ground at gunpoint just months ago, saying that they were in a stolen vehicle. The culture within the side of the Aurora is that of the KKK. There is no doubt about it. It is not a good old boys club. It is the original good old boys club, the KKK. They have brutalized Black men, women, and children from the inception. There's a saying here in Colorado, come to Colorado on vacation, possible probation, intentional incarceration, potentially life without probation. And so you need to understand and overstand that when you walk into this state, it is actually the Rocky Mountain Gateway for the Ku Klux Klan in Springfield, Colorado. We have a very interesting history that would actually be the trajectory for Arapahoe County and Adams County, where Elijah McClain was murdered by the police brutally. There have been over 700 murders in the past 40 years here inside of Arapahoe and Adams County at the hands of police to Black women, Black men, and Black children. The rate of homicide and brutality by these police departments only goes to really highlight the amount of not just brutality, but genocide that continues to happen under the guise of justice. We must stop this. We will stop this. The Caravan for Racial Justice has been working towards a nationwide commitment from all of our accomplices and ourselves to begin to move and make action, not stand still and activate something. We activated something years ago. It is time for us to get to the actions that will change our lives and the lives of our children. We are leading the nation in Protect Black Women. Next Friday, October 16th at DC, we will be having a rally with more than 5,000 Black women from around our nation. We are demanding, we are not asking that you protect Black women, because if you protect Black women, you protect Black children and Black men. So we ask, we don't just ask, we demand, if you are Black, that you stand. If you are an accomplice, because we do not need an ally in a fight. We need someone with skin in the game who is willing to sacrifice their privilege for the good of all. We ask you to stand with us. We demand that you stand with us, that you shun white supremacy, that you shun killer cops, that you demand justice with us, and that you march forward with us as you should, as a human being. Finally, free at last, I say, finally.